Welcome to another one of my videos. This is number 50 of 50, part 3 of 4, Freemasonry and Satanism. Book reviews by Rick Miracle. And for part 50, I've been doing a little bit of the facts of psychic science and a short review of the many books that I reviewed from the previous 49 videos. So I hope you're finding this rather interesting in this end of the 50 series synopsis. So the psychic science is interesting, to say the least. Like I continue to say, from about 1840 to 1940, just prior to World War II, by the way, they had the Psychic Research Society of Europe, and then a few years later they formed the Psychic Research Society of America. And for some strange reason, after World War II, it just wasn't as popular as it used to be, and the research didn't become as open as it used to be. And we know that Hitler and a lot of other people were into this psychic, archaeological mysteries, occultism. So we can say that it seems that it's all tied in together with religious texts and ancient monuments, Zachariah Stitchin books, alien sightings, occultic activities in Hollywood. It seems all this stuff is tied together, which I have been saying in my videos since I started. With that said, let me read from page 31, The Spirit World, and it's a little bit of a question and answer with a spirit. The following quotations are interesting, for they represent the views of a reliable discarnate spirit, so a dead person from on the other side who used to live on planet Earth. Given through a reliable medium, so the medium, the psychic, was reliable, on the conditions prevailing in the spirit world, as far as this is possible when using terms comprehensible to man, they are from a verbatim report published in the Spiritualist for May 4th, 1877, of a seance held in Newcastle on Tyne in December 17th, 1876. The medium was Mimi Esperance, and the sitters Mr. T. Barkis, and the medium's husband. So the medium was there, and the sitter, and the medium's husband. The room was brightly lighted. The questions were first written by Barkis, that would be the sitter, in the MS book, that would be this, okay, which was then placed before the medium, who wrote the answers automatically under the control of a spirit known as Humor Stanford. So they were communicating with the spirit named Humor Stanford. So here we go. They're having a seance. I think they're doing automatic writing, and the medium is probably in a trance. So here's the question. Have spiritual bodies in your sphere force similar to natural bodies in our sphere? So do spiritual bodies in your sphere, the other dimension, the other side where the dead people go, similar to the natural bodies in our sphere? And Mimi Esperance says, yes. Another question. You speak of houses, mountains, and valleys in the spiritual world. Are they impervious to spiritual bodies, as our mountains are impervious to our natural bodies? The answer is yes. They seem precisely the same as your mountains, valleys, and landscapes do to you? Question, are your mountains valleys, and landscapes as impervious to you as ours are to us? And the answer is yes, with the exception of our being able to travel, as it were, by the exercise of willpower, or violation would present the same obstacles to our progress. So they said it's pretty much the same over there, although they can travel by just willing themselves to go from one place to another. Please describe some of the laws that regulate spiritual substances. Have you spiritual physics as we have material physics? Answer, it is very difficult to give you a definite explanation of the laws which govern us, and then when you consider that what to you seem intangible substances are to us ponderable realities, and vice versa. You can easily understand that the whole laws which govern the realities of our life and associations are absolutely reversed, or it would seem to you until you are able to study and examine for yourself. So if she tried to explain it, what it's like in the other world, it would seem like the opposite of our world if they tried to explain it. It seems to me that it is almost a waste of time to try to explain that which I am so little fitted to do. I only mystify you instead of making things clear. Yet indeed it seems such a simple state of matters to us. Till we try to explain, then we are at a standstill for words to give you the ideas we want to convey. So she's saying on the other side, or he's saying, that they really can't explain how their world works, which I might say that most people on planet Earth in 2014 of the general population can't really explain how Earth works, gravity works, why the Earth spins, why the moon stays as far apart as it does, why we all don't float off the planet, why the water goes up and it rains. How many people really don't understand even radio, electronics, TVs, computers? So on this side, if you were communicating with somebody on that side and they wanted you to explain how it worked, could you explain how this side works? Unless you're a physicist or a scientist or just a genius, you probably couldn't explain it. Is there anything in your world equivalent to speech and song in our world? Answer, imagine yourself deprived of every organ of sense. No eyes, no mouth, no ears, such as seeing, hearing, speaking, etc. And yet having all senses, or one embodied in all senses, then you can understand without hearing, see without seeing, speak without speaking. Can you imagine such a state of acute perception, such as intuitive faculty? Can you see then? I can give you no better idea of the manner in which we see, hear, speak, and understand. That's an interesting description of the spirit world. Question, can you in the spiritual world produce oratories, etc., such as are produced in the material world? Answer, such music as may be produced on earth is but the faintest echoes of the sounds which may be heard among us, where everything, every sense, is the perfection of senses, even faculty we possesses is the perfection of the faculties we possess on earth. We possessed on earth. Can you not understand that any artistic attempts on our part are the perfection of those we attempted on earth? Moving on. Question, have you books and collections of records in your sphere, as we have in ours? Answer, yes, not the smallest trifle escapes record. There are histories of those who inhabited this sphere before us, and who have gone on. Not the smallest detail is lost among us. Is your writing alphabetic? And if so, is it phonemic? A. Perhaps the Chinese writing resembles ours more nearly than anything else I can give you as an example. Each symbol is a thought, an idea, and the reader is able to interpret not the symbol he sees. The reader is able to interpret not the symbol he sees, but the thought expressed by the writer, and according to the reader's development of sense or senses, so much does the writing convey. For example, a comparatively undeveloped being reading a sentence would understand just so much as his development gives him power to understand, while one more advanced would read much more than the other. This is also difficult to explain. Question. We shall, if you please, continue our questions on the conditions of the spiritual world. You said that angels occasionally visit your sphere. In what form do they come? In a form common to us all. They have come in the same to you in times gone by, but they have not been received as such. So they're saying angels came to earth. Even here they are doubted by the incredulous, who do not believe in the existence of a yet higher sphere. So the people that are dead in that particular reality don't believe in angels, some of them, and other dimensional beings. There are many here who, if the deity himself were to come amongst them, would ask one another, how do we know that he is what he represents himself to be? What are his credentials? So I guess if God showed up, they wouldn't recognize God either. Interesting. Are there various grades and social states within your sphere? There are grades and stations, barriers of caste, even as among you. Not the caste as you understand by the term, yet as imperialists to the outsiders, as in your mercenary and aristocratic society. These barriers are only to be broken by the one who bears in his hands and face such recommendations as the wholeness of mind, purity of purpose, and philanthropic greatness, such as are the distinguishing features of the society as those he wishes to enter. Did you get all that? In our societies, there are none who are not considered equally worthy, not one in whom any lurking taint of his sometimes associations is to be found. Caste is not to be broken, though here by the outside show that some Phoebian, whose only credentials are a seemingly wealth, but the stamp of goodness and worth is to be plainly seen before they will be received. Question. You said you were a materialist on earth. Have you found that this has affected your prejudice in your present life? Answer. Very considerably. I think I have not so much to unlearn as many have, not so many prejudices to overcome, but I had learned so little that it had been terribly uphill work. So to learn to adapt on the other side was a terribly uphill work. We're almost done with this. Hope you're getting the gist of this conversation with the guy asking the questions in the human world to the spiritual world. Okay, here's just a little bit of a statement made by the writer of this book. Although there is no doubt that all the faculties enjoyed in earth life are retained and strengthened in spirit life, it would appear when spirits communicate with us that, in the matter of memory, there is decadence rather than improvement. We are told very credibly that on passing over, there is a great intensification of memory, but it is just in this particular faculty that communicating spirits often seem to fail. They cannot always give their name, but may remember it later. They do not properly remember at one seance what they have said or what has happened in a previous one if there is a change of medium. With the same medium, they remember clearly. Then again, there is a well-known test of identity arranged before death, which appears nearly always to fail, apparently through defective memory. So a little bit more about the facts of psychic science. So let's get on with the review of the books that I reviewed in the 49 videos. And we'll start out with David Icke. I've got several of his books here. And The Truth Shall Set You Free. You can go online and see a lot of David Icke videos, speaking. I think it's a worthwhile effort. Human Race, Get Off Your Knees. You can see my tabs here. I think when I read this one, I wasn't tabbing. I didn't start tabbing till 2 years ago. Some of these books go way back. I read this way back. So with that said, why don't I just go to my tab book so you can see that that's a lot of reading I did. And I did read these in their entirety when I got them. When I reread them, I'll have to retab them. Alright, so what is some of the things that David Icke talks about? Figure 95. There is a race of blonde-haired, blue-eyed extraterrestrial visitors known as the by UFO researchers as the Nordics. In Africa, they were called the Muzigo, as portrayed by Credo Mondo. He says that even when the white Europeans first arrived in Africa, the people thought it was the Muzugo returning. So that would have been the Nordics. Then a lot of us are familiar with the one on the top there. That would be the Greys. So David Icke talks about a lot of this. And you can see some of my highlights here. Let's see, what did I highlight there? As I began to understand the reptilian connection to life on this planet, I could see yet again why the theme of Mesotopia, summer, and Babylon had been following me almost from the day I met the first psychic in 1990. So this psychic reality and the Egyptian pyramids and all the stones they discovered, all this is tied together. It was no surprise to me when the Illuminati networks invaded the land of summer. Like I've been saying all along, this invasion after 9/11 of the Middle East, killing all the Arabs, displacing all the Arabs, running them off. There's something bigger going on. And they've been, the archaeologists have been digging all over the desert like a dog looking for a bone. And we know they have radar systems now in the sky that can x-ray the ground. So here when David Icke says, it was no surprise to me when the Illuminati, the people who rule the world, the banks, leaders, invading the land of summer, that would be Iraq, Syria, Libya, all that, now Iraq in 2003, and systematically looted the museums of their irreplaceable and priceless artifacts from ancient Mesopotamia, which had the potential, if properly decoded, of revealing a whole new version of human history. This was all done systematically. And it was not only museums, but ancient sites, not researched right across Iraq. London's Guardian newspaper put it into context while the bombing was still happening. So while they were bombing and killing Iraqis, a lot of the military people and archaeologists were digging everywhere looking for something, just like we remember in Indiana Jones movies that Hitler was doing. Very strange. Other things in David Icke's book talks about Palestine. And again, as I keep saying, all this stuff is tied together. For the couple hundred years, even the World War I and World War II, with Theodore Herschel writing the book The Jewish State. And apparently Theodore Herschel, in my previous videos, worked for the Rothschilds printing company. And they wanted to reestablish the biblical rebuilding of King Solomon's Third Temple. So we're taking this into a realm that's just beyond human understanding. Stuff they don't teach you in school. Okay, let's see what David says on this paragraph. And it's a whole lot worse now. Look at the constant theft of Palestinian land, and you'll see what the plan has been all along. It's what I've been saying all along. They're just fabricating all these reasons to go into Iraq and Afghanistan and Syria. And soon it'll be Lebanon and then Jordan, and they intend to take it all down. And a lot of people are dying and have died and will die more. And all the chaos and anarchy and economic destruction in the U.S., a lot of that, I believe, is just so we get distracted and we're not paying attention to this stuff. How can anyone inflict such a lack of mercy on an entire people? The Palestinians, like the rest of the global population, including the mass of Jewish people, are simply animals to the Rothschild Zionist extremists. It's not me saying this, David Icke. Of course, after all my research, I think the Rothschild Zionists, Illuminati, Satanists, banksters, Hollywood, all those people, Rosicrucians, all the occultic and Masonic lodges, and a lot of other people in all kinds of religions who are bought and paid for and greedy and selfish. The Israeli Prime Minister and terrorist Menachem Begin described Palestinians in a speech to Israel Parliament as beasts walking on two legs. And I'm sure if somebody were to do their homework, they probably describe us U.S. citizens as beasts walking on two legs. Why do you think they're got the homelessness and taking people's homes? I talked to 3 or 4 people in the last couple days on a business deal, and every single one of them had lost a home, including me. On purpose? Of course. Because maybe they think we're beasts walking on two legs. Another prime minister and terrorist, Yitzhak Shamir, told Jewish settlers in 1988 that the Palestinians would be crushed like grasshoppers, heads smashed against the boulders and walls. Prime Minister and terrorist Ariel Sharon, then Israeli foreign minister, confirmed in 1998 what the plan really was for the Palestinians. And you can see since they took over, they started out with a little black spot, and then they keep growing and growing, and now what they own now is, well, 46, the total black spot is what the Palestinians own, and now the Palestinians own just this much. So Israel is taking it over. It is the duty of Israel leaders to explain to public opinion, clearly and courageously, a certain number of facts that are forgotten with time. The first of these is that there is no Zionism, colonialization, or Jewish state without the eviction of the Arabs and the expropriation of their lands. No empathy, no mercy. The plan is to kill or drive out the Palestinian people using poverty, hunger, and war, and allow the Rothschild Zionists to expand into greater Israel. This plan is now well advanced. They are seeking to establish a greater Israel that includes their former homeland of Sumer, Babylon, and this is another long-term implication of the American, British, Rothschilds invasion of plan. So Ariel Sharon, the Israeli Prime Minister, in his Congress said, when they had a heated argument about killing the Palestinians, somebody said, well, America will stop that. And Ariel Sharon said, don't worry about the USA. We control the USA. So what it says right here is the American, British, Rothschild control, because they own our banks. So they're making up lies and sending our troops over there to eradicate the Arabs. If you want the simple answer to the whole thing. The mosquito's biting me here. I don't need to keep on reading that. Let me just jump to some other subjects that's in his thing here. The game plan. Destroying the health of us. There's sky spraying and the HARP systems, radiating us with microwaves and vaccines that are poisoning people. So the renegade reptilians can't just arrive in spacecraft and take over. They would have done so long ago if it was that easy. Why would they have worked for thousands of years through their hybrid bloodlines if this was not necessary? So what David Icke is saying is that they've been in our society for a long time. They have interbred. We all know about the alien abductions of people and the babies that were shown to the abductees later on. So again, human race, get off your knees and learn something. The biggest secret. Here's something that's interesting in his book. Apparently, Admiral Byrd, after World War II, took an expedition to the North Pole. According to this theory, which I'm still researching, it's quite fantastic, but it's in the book, that the Earth has holes on the North Pole and South Pole that go into the inside of the Earth, and on the outside of the Earth where we have our oceans, inside the oceans are drawn towards the shell also, and they actually have land and continents on the inside, according to this book. And of course the reptilians, we know they have monuments all over the world describing these creatures, and also on the Egyptian digs they found these things, and the hieroglyphics they found these things. So that would be part of the interbreeding. And the truth shall set you free. Just giving you a taste of what's in this stuff that we reviewed some of it. The Elite Network. And I don't blame people. They find this a little incredible. And they have charts in David Icke's book. Communism, socialism, Zionism, fascism, Republicans, all these people that control our lives are all in cahoots. I do believe that, without a doubt. The First and Second World Wars were made possible by a coup d'etat on the minds of hundreds of millions of people. So the sinking of ships or presidents or people to cause up people to get patriotic and go to war and all that, it was a plan. As the prison wardens program the minds of the global elite, so the elite do the same to people on the earth. It almost wouldn't matter if the global banksters and industrialists were funding both sides. If, and it is one heck of a big if, the people in general had seen what was afoot and refused to take part. I remember the words of that splendid song by Donovan in the 1960s, The Universal Soldier. He's 5'2", he's 6'4". He fights with missiles and with spears. He's all over 31, he's only 17. He's been a soldier for 1,000 years. He's a universal soldier, and he really is to blame. Without him, how could Hitler have become? He's the one who gives his body as a weapon of war. Without him, all the killing can't go on. So again, like I've said before, all this chaos in the Middle East, all this lies and propaganda, pornography on TV, in the movies. If the people would just wake up and say enough is enough. And there's another book, Lessons on Freemasonry by President John Quincy Adams. Got mosquitoes attacking me today. So, you know, when you join a lodge, Freemasonry, York Rite, Scottish Rite, any of these things, you have to swear an allegiance, take an oath. So I thought we'd discuss it. And before he can be qualified to take upon himself this obligation, he must have 6 similar oaths administered to him and have pledged himself to them So help him God under no less penalties than. This is President John Quincy Adams wrote this book, Letters on Freemasonry, disclosing a lot of the inside stuff that was going on in the Freemasonries and how they controlled our government and everything back even then. All right, number 1, to have his throat cut across from ear to ear, his tongue torn out by the roots and buried, his tongue or his body buried in the rough sands of the sea, where the tide ebbs and flows twice in 24 hours. So if you divulge the secrets, that's what they'll do to you. Number 2, to have his left side cut open, his heart torn out by the roots, and cast away to be devoured by vultures. Number 3, to have his head severed in two by the mist, to have his body severed in two by the mist, his bowels burnt to ashes and shattered to the winds. So that's 3 things. Under these penalties, William Morgan had incurred in writing the secrets and mysteries of the craft for publication. So William Morgan put all this stuff that they do in the Freemason and other Masonic lodges in a publication. And if it were possible to concentrate upon one human being, the torture of them all, the agonies that mortal would not be more prolonged or the more excruciating than was the punishment inflicted upon William Morgan. He was seized by the Masonic ruffians at noonday, hurried away from a dependent wife and infant children, by a warrant made upon a false charge of larceny, theft, taken out at 30 miles from his abode, taken out upon the day hallowed to be worship of God, Sunday, I guess. He was carried into another country, discharged as innocent the moment he was brought to trial, then forthwith arrested again for a debt of $2, imprisoned for 2 days. There he offered his coat in payment for the debt, finally discharged again in the darkness of ice by an imposing under the guise of friendship, by an impostor, under the guise of friendship, and immediately upon issuing from prison, seized again under cover of night by concerted signals between the man-stealers of the lodge and of the chapter, gagged to stifle his cries for aid, forced into a coach, transported by carriages of horses and carriages prepared at every change beforehand for his reception 150 miles, there lodged in solitary confinement within the walls of an old abandoned fortress, there detained for 5 days and nights under the perpetual threats of instant death for publishing the secrets of the Masonic lodges. Subject to uninterrupted indignity and abuse, denied the light of heaven in his cell, denied the use of a Bible, for which he earnestly entreated, finally at dead of night, transported by 4 royal arch companions of the avenging craft to the wide channel of the Niagara River, and then sunk to the bottom of that river. 9 days were occupied in the execution of this Masonic sentence. At least 300 worthy brethren and companions of the order were engaged as principals and accessories in the guilt of this cluster of crimes. In this, Mr. Livingston is the offense, the cause of which I aver to be, so he's talking to Mr. Livingston. This, Mr. Livingston, is the offense, the cause of which I over to be the secret tenet of fraternity, the oath, obligation, and penalty of initiation to the mysteries of the craft. Well, we've been reading about some of the mysteries of the craft, the Kabbalah, the Hermetics, the stuff we read in Helena Blavatsky's or Alice Bailey's book about communication with spirits, the Swedenborgian things. So anyways, so what did they do with those 300 perpetrators who abducted Mr. Morgan and tortured him and killed him and all that? So it says here that he had a letter from the General Grand High Priest declaring that the Morgan manuscripts must be suppressed even at the cost of blood, that such a letter purporting to be from Governor Clinton, I like these names popping up, Governor Clinton, not the same Clinton, but more likely a relative to the Bill Clinton we know, was exhibited that he and the governor of the state of New York, where Masonic witnesses have since been sentenced to imprisonment for refusing to testify to the truth. So none of the Masonic people would testify against any of the people who committed the murder of Mr. Morgan. To refute this culminary upon Governor Clinton was one of the honorable motives of Colonel Stone for the publication of his letters upon Masonry and anti-Masonry. So my point is, it's an interesting book. I read it all. John Quincy Adams explains the reality back then. There wasn't the Republican Party or the Democratic Party. There was the Masonic Party and the anti-Masonic Party. And from what we know now, obviously from the Masonic Party, they were Luciferians, occultists, spirit world people, pagans, ancient Egyptian religion. So the opposite of that, of course, would be people who believe in Jesus and Christianity. When we did the Masonry books, we could tell that they really didn't like the Christian Church, Catholic Church, or other religions, Muslims and Islam. Any that believed in God and the Ten Commandments were abhorrent to the devil as much as what God sees doing by the demonic people, the satanic people, is abhorrent to God. So the Luciferians do not like people who are kind, loving, fair treating other people. They think that's insane. And of course we think it's insane that they think that's insane. How do you like that? And then of course we did this book, Behold a Pale Horse by William Cooper. And he talks a lot of stuff similar to David Icke. Alright, so I'll just read one page. I just flip these open randomly when I read some. It's not planning anything here. Just doing a quickie book review. What had been the unfulfilled dream of many individual groups became reality by a concentration of power in an alliance known as the Bilderberg Group. So this is similar, a part of the Illuminati. What had been impossible before now was promised. The New World Order that so many had envisioned was now a certainty. The first study was made during World War II to determine the impact of the returning soldiers on the economy. The results mobilized the ruling elite. The second study was conducted in 1957 by scientists meeting in Huntsville, Alabama. It confirmed the results of the first. The conclusion was that civilization as we know it would collapse shortly after the year 2000 unless population was seriously curtailed. It was 1957. So, 57, they were worried about overpopulation. Well, let me tell you what they did. You're not going to believe it. So how do you convince a bunch of senators and elites and representatives and politicians and stuff that you think there's too many people on your planet and they have to go? You sponsor a report called Report from Iron Mountain. And in that report from Iron Mountain on the possibility and desirability of peace. Now what they were worried about in this report is if there were no more wars, how do you rally the people and you know, lie to them and get them fired up to go to battle and follow the leaders and donate all their goods and taxes and allow themselves to be the involuntary draft and all that stuff? How do you keep control of the people without wars? Well, in this book, they decided, and they had some seriously intelligent, educated people in the world come up with a program on how to do that, to keep people in line. How do you do that? So here, let me try to read this to you. So they came up with several things here. So here's what they decided. Economic surrogates for war must meet two principal criteria. They must be wasteful in the common sense of the word. They must operate outside the normal supply-demand system. The analogy, though crude, is especially apt for the American economy, as our record of cyclical depressions shows. All have taken place during periods of grossly inadequate military spending. So they say they have to continue to create economic chaos to control the people. Health, drastic expansion of medical research, education and training facility, hospitals, clinic construction. The general objective of complete government guaranteed health care for all at a level consistent with the current developments of the medical technology. Education, transportation, physical environment. The old slogan about a battleship or an ICBM costing as much as X hospitals or Y schools or Z homes takes on a very different meaning if there are to be no more battleships or ICBMs. Credibly, in fact, lies at the heart of the problem to develop a political substitute for war, page 66. So they had to find a substitute for war. And what they were finding was they could create false excuses, environmental issues, global warming issues, overpopulation issues, hunger issues, starvation issues, terrorism issues, all that's in this book. This is where the space race proposals, in many ways so well suited as economic substitutes for war, fall short. So they had to create other things to battle, comets, aliens. The most ambiguous and unrealistic space project cannot of itself generate a believable external menace. It has been hotly argued that such a menace would offer the last best hope for peace by uniting mankind against the danger of destruction by creatures from other planets or from outer space. So experiments have been proposed to test the credibility of an out-of-our-world invasion threat. It is possible that a few of the more difficult to explain flying saucers incidents in the recent years were in fact early experiments of that kind. So you can go online and find a copy. Anyways, here we go. Substitutes for war. A comprehensive social welfare program directed towards maximum improvement of the general conditions of life. A giant open-end space research program. So they need some kind of challenge and way to spend money, and they keep the people in line on their, supporting the crooked politicians and Illuminati, in my opinion. Political, an omnipresent, virtually unopposable international police force, an establishment and recognized extraterrestrial menace, massive global environmental pollution, fictitious alternate enemies. This is what some famous people came up with when they wrote Report from Iron Mountain. Go on a used bookstore or a new bookstore and get this book. You won't believe it. And this guy who wrote this book, Leonard Levin, was one of the insiders who was involved in the report, and his conscience bothered him. So he secretly found a publisher who would do this and got it out. Sociological control function. Programs generally derived from the Peace Corps model, a modern sophisticated form of slavery, multi-vocational function, intensified environmental pollution, new religions or other mythologies, socially oriented blood games, Hunger Games the movie, Divergent the movie. Ecological. These are solutions to keep the people enslaved and following the same leadership as they had when they fabricated all the wars. A comprehensive program applied to eugenics. Cultural. No replacement institution offered. Scientific. The secondary requirements of space research, social welfare, and eugenics program. Anyways, I read this entirely. I couldn't believe it. It's as bad as the Protocols of Zion, in my opinion. So that was 1957. So what else did they do to convince the people in the Congress and representatives and all the elites and everything that there was a real problem in the world? Well, the Club of Rome had this book done, The Limits of Growth. So they fake an overpopulation planet. And they go in here to great details of why the planet's going to collapse by the year 2000. published, Club of Rome people, 72. Not able, let's see here, I just read randomly, just open it up anywhere. In order to guarantee the available of adequate resources in the future now, there is no problem back in 72 or 57, but they're trying to convince all the elites and politicians and people that there is a threat. Think about it, 340 million people in the USA, the same size of area approximately to China with 1.3 billion. We are hardly overcrowded in the USA, and 80% of our land is fenced off as national parks, and they won't let the people have access to it, mine it, except for their own corporations, their own greed and access. In order to guarantee the availability of adequate resources in the future, policies must be adopted that will decrease resource use in the present. Most of these policies operate by raising resource costs. So all that stuff you hear about going green and pollution and global warming, it's all a fake. They are lying and propaganding everybody. They're almost like David Icke says they're not human beings. Another book, The Population Bomb. I'm just popping it open here. It seems inevitable. Somebody highlighted this whole book. I get these that use book sites online. It seems inevitable that world political tensions, back in, when was this book? 1968. They said the world by year 2000 would be over. Will increase as the disparity between the haves and have-nots increases. 1968. They knew that the disparity would increase. They're creating the disparity. The proof is right here. Right here in my hands. These books I've been reading. Increases as the penalties of being in a have-not nation become more and more severe. So the more that they make people poor, the more people will probably try to steal something to support and get milk for their baby. And they will punish them even more. So you expect that they might want people just to lay down and die. Political events will have drastic influences on how exactly how the death rate increases. So they want the death rate to increase. We can, however, look at a few possibilities in an aid to our thinking using a device known as a scenario. Scenarios are hypothetical sequences of events used in the aid of thinking about the future, especially in identifying possible decision points. You need any more proof, go get the books. Okay, so now we know that they are worried about no more wars, and what did they do? They did 9/11. We did this book review. You can see all my tabs, it was so unbelievable, the whole thing's almost tabbed. There's just so much stuff here. For example, remember the goat is the symbol for the devil. Got a bug here chasing me. Sorry about that. Get phone calls and I gotta work. Anyways, the absurdity of this book review and these books I've been reviewing is just absurd. With that said, we all know that the goat's head, if you look up the devil or Satan on the computer images, Yahoo images, you'll see it's a goat's head, women's breast, man's body, and goat's feet. So while 9/11 was going on, Bush's defense, as summarized by the 9/11 Commission, was that the president felt he should project strength and calm until he could better understand what was happening. Because apparently when they went into the school where he was reading My Pet Goat, the book, he didn't get up or acknowledge anything was outrageous going on during 9/11. This is exactly the ceremonial conception of a weak presidency, which sees the office as a symbol and object of popular emotional focus rather than a policy-making post-oriented towards action in the real world. So anyways, Webster Tarpley goes into a lot of details of inconsistencies and things going on during 9/11. It didn't make sense. For example, you know, there was a fire in Building 7 and it was pulled and dropped like it was demolitioned. And then, of course, we have the anthrax incident of October 2001. A month later, so they got anthrax hitting the news. The neocons prefer war to peace. There's some crazy and insane stuff going on in our world. And in this book, Al-Qaeda moles, or the U.S. government moles, we know the CIA created the Al-Qaeda. And so much here. NBC tapes show controlled demolition explosives. So I would highly recommend getting this book. Look at it. That's a lot of evidence. Looks like my book is falling apart. Mossad's false flag Al-Qaeda cell. Alright, the head of the Palestinian Prevention Society in the Gaza Strip said Friday, December 6, 2002, that his forces had identified a number of Palestinian collaborators who had been ordered by Israeli security agency to work in the Gaza Strip under the name Al-Qaeda. So Israeli has spies in there and telling these people to be under the name Al-Qaeda. Al Jazeera TV reported that the Palestinian authorities had arrested a group of Palestinians collaborators with Israel occupation in Gaza. So Israel has been paying spies to go in there to bomb people and kill people, pretending they're Palestinians, so that they can retaliate and kill a whole lot more people. Then I did this one book here on dreams, which is very extraordinary. How do you like that? You have demon entities visit you while you're dreaming. I read this book in its entirety. Freud, this conviction led to Freud's second rule. All the elements in a dream must be treated in detail, an association found in every idea, image, and turn of phrase. So we know we have spiritual bodies. Here's a dream image somebody had. Is enclosed in a sun-like womb, connect with his therapist. The patient feels imprisoned. So it's just all this psychic stuff we've been reviewing, and all this stuff with dreams and subliminal states, like it says here. Communicating with the other side, remote viewing, what people see in their hypnotic states. More to the human mind and soul than people know. Then I did this book. And this is real simple. Across the earth there are grids. Like from the North Pole to the South Pole, there are lines like a zebra line of intense energy. And if one of these energies goes across your pillow, it can cause cancer. And they've known about this for thousands of years. Over in China, they call it dragon lines. And if you build your house on one of these lines, you get tumors, cancer. So anyways, just technologies that they don't tell you. They're called Hartman lines and Curry lines. And if your bed is sleeping in one of those lines, you can get stomach tumors, feet ailments. They're only about 3 feet wide. And if you get a dowser, like I do, and you have the sticks or their wands or whatever, we can walk across somebody's yard around the house, and we can see where those lines are. That's how you find water. The underground water streams create some kind of energetic field. So my point is also, is if somebody does have cancer, and you go by their house and determine that their bed is in line with one of these lines over their head. If they move their bed, the cancer will be cured. They don't need the medical treatment, chemotherapy and all that. And they know this, and there's a couple countries in the world that send a dowser out before they'll treat you. And see if you have a Curry line or a Hartman line going over your where you sit or sleep regularly, causing your ailment. Just imagine your blood cells in your body with a constant flow in a particular direction of an electromagnetic field. And you know, the cells would be bent in that way because they contain metal, and they have a very thin wall. And that's how cells feed also, by the way, is as nutrients go by, they're magnetically attracted to that particular cell, and they go shoot into the cell. So just saying, there's more than what people know. After careful documentation, Kate Blanchard herself, a teacher, studied the importance of sleeping in a safe place, free from natural radiation. Over 11,000 cases, she was able to show a strong correlation between beds over dangerous radiations and learning difficulties, illnesses, or even cancer. So the medical establishment obviously doesn't want that out there. Then we got this book. Leonard Cole, Clouds of Secrecy. The Army's Germ Warfare Test Over Populations. I read all this. So apparently they would go to subway systems in cities and other places, and they would have these little secret dispensers of germs and flus and diseases just going in a subway. And then they would track how many people would get sick. Because apparently there's a world treaty going on that says you can't test these Army's germ warfare weapons. You can't test them on other countries. So they're testing them on their own country. In California and in New York and stuff, they have ships offshore, and they allow the different kinds of contaminants and disease-making entities, biologicals, blow them up into the air, let them blow over some place like Los Angeles. Or out there in Kansas, they have a tractor-trailer that drives through and throws all this stuff up into the air. Time after time, they did this. So, you know, when I do these videos and I read this stuff, you know, if I didn't read all this, I wouldn't believe it. Morning of the Magicians. I read all this one. It's fascinating. Let's see, Hitler was fascinated with these ideas and loved to immerse himself in them. The only way in which he could explain the miracle of his own destiny was by attributing it to the action of the unseen forces, the same forces to which he owed his superhuman vocation of having to preach the new gospel to humanity. The human species, he used to say, has been through a prodigious number of cycles since it's made its first appearance. This is page 177 in this book. So Hitler's into this occultic stuff too. Throughout the ages, it has traversed many stages of advancement and was now coming to the end of its solar period. Already the first specimens of the supermen were beginning to appear. And we know they're into cloning, we know they're into the new eugenics, genocide in many places. This is getting pretty scary. Monsanto and designer foods that are alter people, sky spraying, electromagnetic radiation in the sky. And then we have the Morning of the Magicians talking about Hitler. A new race was heralded, which would take precedence over the old, the New World Order. Just as according to the immortal wisdom of the ancient Nordic peoples, the world continually renewed itself by casting off the past. So they want to cast us off. In the series of twilights of the gods, just as the solstices, that would be witches' holidays, in ancient mythology were symbols of the rhythm of life, not developing continuously or in a straight line, but spirally, so did humanity progress in a series of forward and backward leaps. So we know they're causing all this chaos and mayhem intentionally. When Hitler spoke to me, continued Ramstein, he tried to explain his vocation as the herald of a new humanity in rational and concrete terms. For example, creation is not yet completed. Man has reached a definite stage of metamorphosis. The ancient human species is already in a state of decline, just managing to survive. Well, I think we'd all be doing fine if these evil people weren't doing what they're doing. Humanity accomplishes a step up once every 700 years, and the ultimate aim is the coming of the sons of God. David Icke, William Cooper, Morals and Dogma, all these books I'm reading, it's right here. All creative forces will be concentrated in a new species. This is what Hitler was explaining to his friend Ramstein. The two varieties will evolve rapidly in different directions. One will disappear and the other will flourish. It will be infinitely superior to modern man. Do you understand now the profound meaning of our National Socialist movement? Here in the United States we call it a New Age. Whoever sees in National Socialism nothing but a political movement doesn't know much about it. Get this book, read it. Any one of these books ought to tick off anybody. Then you got this one. Oh my God. Leonard Horowitz, Emerging Viruses, AIDS, and Ebola. Well, I'll just be quick about it, but I'll tell you what happened. They created AIDS, and they created all the stuff. They've been working feverishly in all these laboratories to make these diseases. Millions, billions spent on contracts for major laboratories. The CIA and the Mad Doctor in Canada. Despite its proprietary appearance, this is page 319, the Rockefeller Commission, there we go, Rockefeller, Rothschilds, Kennedys, Morgans, Chases, Schiffs, and so many other names of the bloodlines in the Illuminati, like Fritz Springmeier's book. The Rockefeller Commission was anything but thorough in its investigation and reporting CIA improprieties. Had they been, they might have discussed Operation MK Ultra, the agency's most notorious and barbarous mind control experiments. So they got mind control experiments and they're fabricating and creating plagues and diseases. Get this book. I read this entire book. This is before I started tabbing. Read every page of this book. How many pages? 562. And then, you know, we did the 3 videos on these books. 5 videos. And I did it on purpose, so many. The New Age, the Freemasonry magazine, 1934. I didn't want to bore people with these one after another, but I wanted to convince people they were there. 1927. 1949. And what do they tell us? One thing they tell us is they have lodges everywhere, all over the world. The Supreme Council of Favors. They talk about not mixing no church and state with religion, separation. But then again, they're into occultism and Luciferism when they want to get Christianity and God out of your schools. It was in the news yesterday, this lady in Florida on the InfoWars website, in a 6th grade, so they were, what, 11, 12 years old? She was demonstrating, this is yesterday, today is September 16th, 2014, InfoWars. Anyways, she had a dildo, strapping it on in front of the 11 and 12-year-olds, demonstrated in its use, claiming she was a proud member of the gay community, and the public schools sponsored this, but they want to take Christianity and religion out of the schools, but they're bringing in that filth, and they had live pictures on InfoWars I'd copied it all, and I went back to see if anybody had commented on my comment, and somebody had taken it down from the website. So apparently it was pretty explosive. She was strapping on the dildo right in the classroom, showing the 11, 12-year-olds how it worked. So 1949, so Scottish Rite dates, let's see, China, Canal Zone, District of Columbia, Hawaii, Maryland, Nevada, Oklahoma, all these meetings, all these, that was well as one page there, here's 2 more pages, meetings all over the world of the Supreme Councils of all the Masonic lodges. They're everywhere and they keep a low profile, and they don't want you to know what they're doing. It says here, page 618, while many obstacles to a permanent New World peace still remain, it is obvious that with all the powers making a seemingly sincere effort to arrive at a better understanding by diplomatic means, the possibilities of an armed conflict in Europe are becoming increasingly remote. This is 1934. Of course, World War II was 6 years later. That's what it said in here. So they said it was increasingly remote. 6 years later, they have World War II. And then we investigated some of the journals on American psychic research that I keep talking about. This was the American Society of Psychical Research. Some of the stuff we talked about. A Jew, 21 years old, from Parkersburg, West Virginia. This young man was deeply attached to his home people and suffered a time of nostalgia. He came to my room Wednesday night and told me he was much troubled on account of not hearing from his home and feared illness in the family. He asked me to induce unconsciousness and send him to his home in order that he might obtain definite information. This I did, and after a few moments of apparently dull, heavy sleep, his face brightened with a happy smile. So they hypnotized him, sent him overseas, check on his family, and he was happy. Apparently everything was okay. And of course we did the video that the psychic would go in a trance, and different images. There's a cross that appeared. And here a human head appeared upon photography. And here some writing appeared, which I thought was interesting. The moon and the star, the symbols of the occultic Kabbalah, when they're doing the psychic going into a trance. And when they took a photograph of the guy holding a blank plate, those words appeared. From the psychic world. Alright, I hope you're enjoying my quick review. I am doing this rather quick. Alright, then we went over the book, The Serious Mystery. And apparently the natives in Africa had drawings and their religion about a star system in the heavens, the Dogon tribe. And here's the different star charts. So here this professor goes down there to Africa and finds out the Dogon had a whole religious history on some beings from the star system Sirius, and what it was and how the stars were aligned and everything. And then of course we have Stephen Quayle's book, Giants. And apparently all over the world, whenever they find a gigantic skeleton, the Smithsonian or government guys in black suits show up, get the remains, and they disappear. So what's up with that? They got some pictures on the internet you can look and see if there's any pictures here. But apparently throughout history, there have been some really immense people. And all over the world, Nebraska, overseas, South America, you know, they got heads of some kind of humans almost the size of a refrigerator, washing machine, half the size of a refrigerator. 4 or 5 guys standing around the skull. They don't teach you that in school. If you go on the internet and you look up giants and pictures, you'll see all that. The destruction of angelic civilization. So all this stuff in history, the stuff they don't tell you. So with all that said, I thought I would just peek at this book one more time. Finish this video. Alright. One more question and answer with the spirit world. Kardec supposed that the spirits whom he chastised were infallible. And one has only to read the readily given sophisticated answers to his leading questions to be amazed by his simplicity in accepting them. The following quotations from the Spirit's book indicate the nature of the instruction he received by automatic writing. Question: what foundation is there for the doctrine of reincarnation? This is talking to the spirit world. The justice of God and revelation. For, as we have already remarked, an affectionate father always leaves a door of repentance open for his erring children. Question: the soul has, then, many corporal existences? It's many times you live on the earth, or somewhere. Yes, we all have many such existences. Facts of psychic science. True or not, this is what is in the book. Yes, we have many such existences. Those who maintain the contrary wish to keep you in the same ignorance in which they are themselves. Question: it would seem to result from this statement that the soul, after having quitted one body, takes another one. In other words, that it reincarnates itself in a new body. It is thus that this statement is to be understood. Answer: evidently so. Question: what is the aim of reincarnation? Answer: expiation. Expiation? Progressive improvement of mankind. Without this aim, where would be its justice? Question: we may then reappear several times upon earth? Answer: certainly. Question: can we come back to it after having lived in other worlds? Answer: assuredly you can. You may already have lived elsewhere as well as upon the earth. Edgar Casey, in his readings, about 18,000 readings, he told a lot of people that their lives in Atlantis and in Egypt and all over the world. Question: is it necessary to live again upon this earth? No. But if you do not advance, you may go into a world no better than this one, or even worse. So, your goal is to advance according to this stuff. Is there any advantage of coming back to inhabit this earth? No special advantage. Question: why does the incarnated spirit lose the remembrance of his past? Answer: man cannot and may not know everything. God in his wisdom has so ordained. Without the veil which he hides certain things from his view, man would be dazzled like one who has passed suddenly from darkness to light. Through the forgetfulness of his past, a man must be more fully himself. The last sentence, italicized, is the original, indicates the erroneous of the ideas underlying Kardec's conception of the doctrine of reincarnation. So I don't know if any of that made any sense to you. So we talked about giants, skeletons discovered all over the world, African tribes having a whole religion based on a star system they couldn't see without a telescope, thousands of years old, psychic research, all kinds of books from the Masonic societies. And we got Leonard Horowitz's book on all the proof that all those... this talks about Ebola, that's probably important. The Tropical Disease Bulletin reported that 3 viruses, Marburg, Ebola Zaire, and Ebola Sudan were morphically indistinguishable, although antibody studies confirmed distinct differences between the strains that broke out in Germany and the Yugoslavia in 1967, and those that hit the Ebola River Valley in '76. Thus, the Sudan and Zaire strains were named Ebola to distinguish them from the original Marburg virus. Another reference I reviewed this morning was Marburg virus by Radolf Siegert, who was affiliated with the Hygiene Institute of the Philipps University in Marburg, Germany. So my question is the government creating these viruses? Are they going to use it for that depopulation thing that we talk about in the books here? In the Morning of the Magician and Hitler, and into all this occultic stuff we've been talking about. This is an interesting book. Talks about all the Kabbalah stuff and Hitler and people throughout the ages into this stuff. And then the testing on American people and world people, but specifically in America, many times, causing diseases and infirmities, sicknesses. Cures, if you got cancer, your bed's probably, you're laying in a heavenly, heavy radiation zone. So you're going to go get more radiation, chemotherapy to kill you. And the craziness of dreams, the psychic effects of that, Webster Tarpley's, way more than enough proof to show you that 911 was fabricated and intentional. You know, they even had the people who made a bunch of money in the stock market. They write books to convince people there's too many people on the planet. Report from Iron Mountain. Plans for your politicians to fake things to keep you under control. Club of Rome, Limits to Growth, 67. William Cooper. I'm just putting all my books away and picking them up. Freemasonry, they killed Morgan because he wrote a book and told about it. John Quincy Adams tells all about the, you can't be in politics unless you're a Mason, you know. You'll never get up to, Springmeyer already proved it, so did many others, that most of the presidents are related. David Icke's books. So there you have it. If you don't think there's a conspiracy going on, wake up. Thank you for watching my videos. This number 50, I just wanted to do a recap of what we reviewed of the past 49 videos. And so we got one more video to go. I hope I can get them all in there. That's why you see me rushing through this. God bless us all. God help us all. That's what I pray. Because it certainly seems a little weird. The discarnate spirits on the other side are incommunicado with the occultists and the hermetics, like Gene Roddenberry said. He would go into meditative states to get his storyline for the Star Trek series. The spirits were telling him stories. Or is he telling them real events that happened in the past? Eons, ages, other dimensions? So when I watch the old Star Trek series now, I see them in a different light. Anyways, Rick Miracle bringing you a different reality than you're probably used to or know of.